the EU Association Agreement with our honored guests, Georgian and Ukrainian politicians and experts, namely Mr. Mikhail Ukleba, Ambassador of Georgia to Ukraine, Viktor Dolidze, Chairman of the EU Integration Committee of the Parliament of Georgia, Zviat Kvanchatiradze, the first Deputy Chair of the External Relations Committee, who will join us via Skype, Grigory Nemeria, Chairman of the Verkhovna Rada Committee on European Integration, and Oleg Rybachuk, Chair and co-founder of the Center UA. Later on, Irina Геращенко, the Deputy Chair on European Integration of Verkhovna Rada, will join us. Прошу, вітаємо наших наступних гостей і будемо говорити.
Welcome our guests, and we'll speak about the ratification of economic part of the association agreement which Ukraine signed not long time ago. Please. Good afternoon. My name is Andrei Matulik. I'm Director of Social Political Plan and Dialogue. Our institute is one of the organizers of this press briefing. And some organizing, some logistic comments. Our briefing, though, we'll have Ukrainian and Georgian deputies will participate. We will have two languages, Ukrainian and Russian. We will speak mostly Russian. For everything to be clear, we'll speak Russian. So the agenda is, the schedule is a presentation for 7 minutes, and then you can ask your questions to the guests, and you can talk to our guests. And Georgian deputies will speak to us by Skype. They will be speaking together. So the topic of this briefing is ratification in general. To speak about the ratification, it's like a serial, long serial. So the first part was with the signing, and the second part was we were watching it. With the signing, there were dramatic events, and it was very difficult. But now it's with ratification, there is a more unclear things. As to the first part, just an objective analysis allowed to make a conclusion that that document would not be signed in Vilnius during the summit. And many experts and our Institute of Social Political Planning, we told that last February we prepared an analytical report and published it on the Ukrainian Pravda site. It's not in the US, and why it was not supposed to be signed in 2013. And those certain reasons are brought to non-signing that agreement in Vilnius. As to ratification, there are more unclear things. If the document is signed and if nothing is changed, why it is not ratified as soon as possible, like they did in Moldova and in Georgia. They ratified the document in the parliament, and so we'd like to speak to our Georgian MPs from Georgian Parliament just to find out how they succeeded to do that, and I'll give the floor to the head of the head on Euro Integration Committee, Grigory Nemeria. Good afternoon. I would like to thank the organizers for an opportunity to share my opinion about this important topic, because it's important for not only for a political party or a political institution, it's important for Ukraine. And it's important for the whole region, including Eastern Partnership neighborhood countries. I would like to remind you of the chronology. Ukrainian finished the negotiations on the association agreement and with FTA in December 2011. 2 years ago, in July 2012, that agreement was signed. Initiated, and since that point nothing was changed, and not at all. In that agreement on the 27th of June in Brussels, that agreement was signed by the President of Ukraine, and such agreements were signed with head of states of Georgia and Moldova. So that was signed by 28 leaders of EU countries. And on behalf of EU, the head of European Council, and a month passed. During this month, that agreement was ratified in Moldova, and the Parliament of Georgia did on the 18th of July, and 3 countries of the EU ratified all 3 agreements. Moldova, Georgia, and with Ukraine, Romania, Lithuania, and Latvia. They did it. And it's expected that very soon some other countries will ratify that agreement. First of all, Baltic Scandinavian countries. What is an unratified agreement? It's like not baked bread, not something you cannot eat. I would like to remind negotiations on the association agreement. Ukraine had those negotiations for 4 years. It's less than agreements on WTO because those negotiations took us for 12 years or 14 years. But negotiations is not a process for the sake of process. All the participants of the campaign for the president of Ukraine, including the winner, Petro Poroshenko, when they answered the question, you do have a program of reforms? So the answer was yes. That program of reforms, that is, includes association agreement together with FTA. And that's what is important. Some candidates added, that is our civilization choice. What is on the stake? Choice of Ukraine, and a program of reforms and modernizing that allows to make the association agreement, which is an instrument of economic integration and political association. How different this agreement is from 200 agreements on FTA, because this is an enhanced agreement. It's not only about reducing or cancel tariffs or non-tariffs limitations. It's about regulatory convergence. The economy of Ukraine becomes compatible with the biggest market in the world, that is EU. What are the arguments why until now this agreement is not signed, not ratified in the Parliament? There are some reasons. The first argument we heard from the President of Ukraine on the day of signing in Brussels. He told the agreement, unfortunately, cannot be ratified in the summer because the Parliament will go for vacations and will be able to do that not earlier than September. Then the Parliament make a decision to continue its work. And today we have a plenary session, and also there will be in August there will be the next plenary session. So the argument that it cannot be ratified because the Parliament has vacations is not true. The second argument, or official argument, that according to the law of Ukraine on international treaties, there should be a technically prepared and agreed between all the agencies and ministries ratification package. And the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs are responsible for that. Yesterday, the meeting of the Committee on European Integration, where we considered this issue, the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Economy gave a clear answer. Technical part is over. I had a conversation several days ago with the Minister of Justice of Ukraine, who confirmed that all necessary agreements were achieved last week. So technically, it was the agreement was ready to be brought to the President of Ukraine. So technical argument is now not enforced because yesterday, not only me but all the present at the meeting of the committee, which was on live on the first Ukrainian channel. That's the first time there was a clear answer of representatives of the government. What arguments are there left? There is an argument which ties delayment with a necessity to prepare the national plan of implementation that requires a certain law, and that plan is not ready. That's why when it will be ready, then the agreement will be brought to the Parliament for ratification. I don't see how it is connected. I don't see the connection here or any explanation why it makes sense, because first of all, the experience of all EU countries, former candidates, shows that such thing can be done by the regulation of the government, and if necessary, a little bit later on, when the negotiations begin, then it will have a status of the law. Nothing hinders to do that It could be done by through the regulation of the cabinet of ministers. I mean the plan of the implementation, so that argument cannot be used as important. What are other arguments? Yesterday at the meeting of the committee, and maybe there were some comments about the old new economic argument. There was an information that if Ukraine continues for some time, delays ratification, and there will be a benefits regime according to which Ukraine can get every month because of import tariffs. Every month we can get about 260 million hryvnia, and in 2 months it's 520 million hryvnia. When we made those calculations, and then the average mathematical from the point of view of input tax, that is from 2 to 4%. When we wanted to get the origin of those calculations, we found out that information was taken from the dossier which was prepared in 2013. So that was the old Minister of Economy for the President Yanukovych, to give him explanation, to prepare explanation why he was refusing to sign the association agreement. So that was an instrument of negative dossier, which explained why we should not sign the association agreement. They're using such argument now under new conditions after the revolution of dignity, after presidential election. It's not only not correct economically, but also unacceptable morally. There's one more argument, probably the last one, like indirect. It's like an indirect argument that some countries, EU members, they advise Ukraine not to be in a hurry with the ratification of the agreement on association, because that can cause additional complications. We don't buy such an argument, because that means de facto recognition of a veto right of the third country for the sovereign external foreign civilization choice of Ukraine. And that argument is politically incorrect, because, as I told you, all 28 leaders of the states of EU, they signed that agreement. And the Council of Europe and the European Parliament, European Commission, and the Commission on Neighborhood Policy Stable Fuller, they call Ukraine to ratify Ukraine as soon as possible. They swift ratification. That's what they require. That's what they call Ukraine to. They call Ukraine to do that. We discussed that issue during our meeting yesterday at the committee, that a possible, not public idea is because they wanted to begin political consultation between EU, Russia, and Ukraine. The first round of political consultations took place on the 11th of July with the participation of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Klimkin, Minister of Russian Federation Lukayev, and Commission on Trade from EU called the Gucht. And we know that the second round of such consultations is planned for the 12th of September this year. We know that one of the drafts of documents were prepared by Russian Federation provides that there should be a joint document, and with some changes, possible changes to the agreement before the ratification. We are very concerned with such developments, and we believe that when technical experts consultations discussed on the level of experts, when there is a rational approach and can be created, but on political level, even consultations, if not negotiations, that's very close to de facto recognition that the third country, Russian Federation in this case, has the right of influence on the civilization choice of Ukraine. That's why we don't see the necessity to connect time for ratification with finish or not finish in political consultations. So all possible variants are exhausted, all arguments are exhausted. Why the agreement cannot be brought to ratification. We believe that the ratification of the agreement between Ukraine and EU on association, that is the most efficient anti-terrorist operation. We must not forget that one of the regions of the aggression of Russia against Ukraine, that was they wanted to hinder Ukraine on its way to strategic way to EU through economic integration in the framework of this agreement on enhanced FTA. We believe that from the point of view of clearness of the position of Ukraine, and if we wanted to underline our civilization choice, from the point of view of political responsibility, the president should bring immediately the agreement for ratification. I'm sure that we had consultations with representatives of political groups and factions that agreement will get more than a constitutional majority. That's why yesterday in the meeting of the committee we supported the regulation and appeal to the president and immediately bring the agreement to the parliament for ratification, not later than September 12. For that, to make it to be considered this week or in August, when we will have a working week in the parliament. That regulation was supported by all except communists, which stands against European choice for Ukraine. We believe that political responsibility and to Ukrainian people and solidarity with our colleagues and partners from countries who participate in Eastern Neighborhood program, that Moldova and Georgia, they must demonstrate in fact, and we believe that the President of Ukraine will bring this agreement for ratification, immediate ratification. Thank you for attention.
So you said that you have the constitutional majority in the parliament. Can you mention specific factions and groups that are going to support you? That was announced by all of them, but the only exception, the faction of the Communist Party. If you have any questions, please put them and then we'll go on. I would like to apologize at 3 sharp. I have a meeting. Having a meeting with the Elmer Brook group, and I'll have to leave you earlier because of that. Volleyball of Ukraine facts and events of the week. The head of the Committee on European Integration, Mr. Grigory Nemiri. In this case, tell us, please, if it is signed and ratified, that will have impact on all the strata of our population, our social, political life. So the only thing remaining is ratification. The motion of the president, yes. According to the law of Ukrainian international agreements, only the president can motion this at the parliament. So we'll wait for him, for his decision, his submission. One short question. You're on news.
Sergio Cantone, your news, as you said. I have a question concerning the implementation, the ratification, sorry, of the agreement. According to you, wouldn't it be better to ratify in order to have more appropriate implementation laws to ratify with a new assembly? So to have elections as soon as possible in the country and then ratify the agreement. Then, sorry, I have a second question. And don't you think that it would be important to annex to this document also a specific part concerning the regions where at the moment there is a conflict, not only because of the conflict, but also because of the, say, contrasting issues concerning an economic transition in those regions that are part of apparently the fear of the population in that part of Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. My short answer is no. No, I don't think it would be good to wait until the new parliament will be elected to ratify it for two reasons. One is very pragmatic. For, as you may know, European Union considered and applied a unilaterally a special regime for Ukraine and Ukrainian exporters that is valid until the 1st of November of this year. To ensure that this regime will continue, or then the regime of the temporary application, provisional application of the economic part of the agreement is valid, not waiting until all the 28 member states would ratify it. Ukraine has to ratify, Ukrainian parliament has to ratify this agreement at least 2 months before the expiration of this deadline, which is November the 1st. So if we don't want, and we don't want to waste this window of opportunity for the regime which is beneficial of Ukraine, because of also asymmetric nature of the association agreement, European Parliament has a strict deadlines. That's why it's rationale for urging President to respect this deadline and not to procrastinate till the last minute. Second argument is a political one, because as I mentioned, this is precisely what the mandate of this Rada got, and also this is a responsibility to Euromaidan. We have to remember that Maidan has started with young people protesting against the decision of the Ukrainian government and President Yanukovych not to sign association agreement. That was the organizing idea of the first days of Maidan. And you remember the slogan of this mass rally that basically initiated Maidan: Ukraine is Europe. What could be the best way to show this to Ukrainians and to the whole world is to ratify this agreement. So also, I should also make a point of caution. Procedurally, and in terms of the perception, if and when this hypothetical scenario of early elections in October of this year will be materialized, then the Rada will be dismissed. So the Rada will be disbanded. So what's the capital the disbanded Rada has to try to ratify the agreement? So the whole meaning of that, if not impossible, it's severely undermining. So therefore, I do not see any reason, either technical, economic, or political, to delay ratification until the next assembly. As far as your second question is concerned, whether it would be appropriate to consider a special part that would address Donbass, the region I'm from, Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast, I think it's perfectly possible, in addition to the association agreement, which is a comprehensive instrument that addresses all the sectors, including the sectors where Donbass is strong, like steel industry, chemical industry, or machine building industry. There is an effort within the donors conference, the next stage of which is scheduled for early autumn next year, to address this issue, which would concern two tracks. One, rehabilitation of this region after, if by that time, hopefully, the war will be stopped, and then to bring foreign direct investments, external financing that would allow to modernize and to invest. By the way, what could be the best signal for the external investors when agreement is ratified and started to be implemented? This is the strongest possible signal that Ukraine can do to attract badly needing foreign direct investments, because this is legal predictability, this is binding agreement, this is a dispute resolution instrument, and again, this is a moment of truth to show and to exhibit an utmost political responsibility to table and to ratify this agreement as soon as possible. Thank you. До побачення.
Спасибо большое, господин Анимыри.
Thank you very much. Now we'll have our Georgian guests, our speakers. First of all, the ambassador of Georgia and Ukraine, Mikhailo Kleba, and then two MPs that will talk to us on Skype. Your Excellency, the floor is yours. Good afternoon. I'd like to greet you. I think it's very symbolic that Now we are in a hotel called Ukraine, and next to Maidan, and we are talking to the very important date on the 18th of July when our parliament ratified the association agreement unanimously, by the way, and that speaks for the fact that they were as one, and that opinion and our strategy is in full consistency with that. So this is Euro-Atlantic integration and full scope for Georgia. We understand also that this is a very important stage, and by the way, I would like to say that it's very important to me as a person who was in 1994 head of delegation, and then when they had 15 member countries in the EU in 1996, we signed the partnership and cooperation agreement. It's very symbolic. It crowns our efforts, my team and myself. When we started, it was a different reality, the European choice, the European identity, but it's been a while, and now we have arrived at the destination. We have to be proud of it. And it's very important that Moldova and Ukraine joined us in that, together with us, and we hope that Ukraine will very soon ratify this agreement. Of course, it's a very big effort. It's a formidable task. It's difficult to gain independence, but much more difficult to retain it. So around the clock, we have to work in Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. And this means also implies some coordination. So I would like to congratulate you and our country, thank our Georgian team. They worked very industriously. We sped up and we signed that agreement. And the team from Brussels and all European countries that are in cooperation with us and were express their solidarity. From Kutaisi, from our parliament, we can have our colleagues, they're both important diplomats, Victor Dolidze, head of Committee for European Integration, Zviadkon Chantiradze, deputy head of Foreign Relations Committee for the Georgian Parliament. They will join our conversation, then we'll be prepared to answer your questions, all three of us. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Now we are going to talk to our Georgian interlocutors. Well, that's it was arranged in such a way that in April, together with the Consul Rakledvadze, we had the roundtable on possible European integration, opportunities for Donbas mostly, and challenges of the document. And 2 weeks later, Zviad had to leave Donetsk. He's now in Georgia, but by Skype he can join us. And his communication with our institute, especially when it comes to Russian-Ukrainian relations, when they are available, they will tell you how they managed at the Georgian parliament to vote unanimously for this ratification. So while we are arranging all the technicalities, Oleg Rybachuk, who have, say, former Vice Prime Minister of Ukraine on European integration, had sent to you one of the sponsors of this event. Yesterday, I also joined the Committee on European Integration and the meeting there, and I would like to testify that there's no reason whatsoever that would prevent us from going on with ratification. It's been a month, and from the earliest hours, I was on the student Maidan that demanded signing of the agreement. Ukraine is Europe. That was the most popular slogan. And people asked me about our destiny. I could then imagine anything but this kind of conference around the ratification. I cannot add anything to the arguments, but I can say that ratification will take place, and we are doing the right thing. We're creating this public pressure on the president, the authorities in this case, and they can feel the pressure from the outside also. But the Ukrainian president was elected by the Ukrainian people. The Ukrainian president can be held responsible by the people and put on the ropes. Because from experience of all presidents, we can tell that only one of them managed to have 2 terms in the office. And then it was 5 minus 1, minus 1. And he just spent 4 years in his office. And the political situation is where it ends. So in this situation, I would like to express a word of caution. Let's not make it worse. All of the responsibility rests with the executive branch of power. It's not about our ministries not being ready. First of all, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Minister Klimkin dedicated part of his life, 12 years, he said once, if I'm not mistaken, for signing of this agreement. I know such people, those people, it's not the issue. It's about some outer pressures. And I belong to that part of the public. It's a broad coalition. And that includes the case when the public made the parliament forget about any holidays. We had certain activities there. We had a rally. But I would like to say a couple of words. The main risk is not ratification, signing of the agreement that has already taken place, but successful implementation. Implementation of this agreement. And I have to answer this question very often, like we have deputies on European integration, some other movements and developments. I've been through it. Once upon a time, I was first prime minister. We had deputies on European integration, deputy governors, lucky, happy people. It's a prestigious position because those deputies like learning from the European experience on the spot, and they studied loads of experience. Deputy minister on agricultural policy. Peasants responsible for European integration those days. And Minister Klimkin did say that the big issue is qualification, being on a level with it, qualifying for it. But even a bigger issue is the steering committee, the coordinating body, the focal point. I learned this from our predecessor experience. We cannot do it unless we have a hub of coordination. We can call it Bureau for European Integration. Sometimes in Georgia it's called a ministry, practically.
Well, the head of that office has powers like a vice prime minister. What is important that there is a team of people who 24 hours work on that issue. In Poland, there was a secretariat, which consists of students at the beginning, who wanted to live in a different country, and they had very good communication skills. They knew how to use a computer, and they wanted to speed up this process. It can be done in Ukraine because we don't have such professionals Euro-integrator, but there should be a secretariat, and it should be subordinate to the prime minister in Ukraine. And once a week, and I told you several times, once a week the government should convene, and the secretariat will prepare the agenda, and every minister of Ukraine, every head of the central executive body should report what was done during that week. The secretary is responsible for preparing materials to the prime minister, but it's not enough. There should be a the highest political will. The parliament, there was a short path to reform, and any draft law from the government in the framework of implementation of the agreement, that was it took a short path, and it had a green line. It was very passed very quickly. We cannot speak about this. We cannot do this in this parliament. So the requirement to the parliament should be not to make themselves not to torture people, and to elect those who can not only speak about European integration, but who can pass laws. But that is our next challenge. But now, I would like to use this chance. There are journalists here and cameras and a lot of social public attention to emphasize once again what are our we have our Georgian efforts, and this is our demand: ratification, re-election of the parliament, elections to the parliament, and then in that national strategy we should build a body which will be responsible for coordination and implementation of the agreement. Thank you for your attention, and then I will answer your questions later. Thank you. There will be questions later, and then now finally we can speak to our Georgian MPs. And good afternoon. Do you hear us? Please, who will be the first to speak? This speed, though we are in my office, because my colleague is responsible, he runs the Committee on Euro Integration. I think he should begin. I would like to say hello to all audience. And I would like to mention, I would like to express condolences related to the events in Ukraine. You must know that Georgia is always with you. And as to the agreement on association, I would like to say that this is a historic event. 5-6 days ago, we ratified the association agreement, and European Union also has some obligations, and we have negotiations. Implementation of those commitments that we signed under, as you know, we will work on that, and we'll work on healthcare, environment. We should work on building good structures for integration. And in September, we'll begin to work on that more. I would like to wish the same to our Ukrainian friends. I know that everything is difficult in Ukraine now, but on different levels, you and us, we have a great chance. I wish we had very good reforms in our countries. We need to reform a lot of institutions, and but I would like to wish you all the best, and we support you on your way to EU. I would like to continue. Maybe there will be a question. Let us do this. You speak, and then we'll ask if journalists have questions. I would like to express my greetings to journalists in your center. This is a historic chance which allows us, Ukraine and Georgia and Moldova, to return to where we must live. That is a general European house. And we are very glad that our partners on this important historic road, our friendly nations, our friends in Ukraine and Moldova. We are especially happy that not only in the framework of European partnership, but in the format of bilateral relations between Georgia and Ukraine, everything improves on political level, on economic level, and we notice a big growth of trade between two countries and the growth of tourist flows. And compared to 2012, in 2014, tourists from Ukraine to Georgia went up by 65%, when we had 76,000 tourists in 2012, and in last year it was 126,000. Now, only in half a year, the growth compared with the previous year is 11 more thousand more tourists from Ukraine. You know that the president of Georgia visited Ukraine, Kiev, and quite recently, the deputy minister of Foreign Affairs visited Kiev also, and she had meetings with her colleagues in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And your ministers of Justice, of infrastructure, they also visited Georgia, and they will learn Georgian experience, a positive experience, let's call it, which we have, which we acquired during the previous years, and they are thinking how to use Georgian experience in Ukraine. So our relations, in addition to human contacts between nations, between peoples of our countries, they will improve, and we hope that even in the framework of a new format and cooperation on this road, on the road of European integration, our relations will grow and improve. And we're very happy with that. I would like to remind that Georgian Parliament, which at the very beginning of its work very clearly made statements that we support Ukraine, and we have a clear attitude to everything which is happening in the eastern part of your wonderful country. We hope we tragically perceived, and it's unacceptable what happened to that MH17 flight. That we believe that international experts and international institutions should run comprehensive investigation immediately. And we agreed today that in the format of cooperation, we will start working on a joint statement around this tragic event, and probably everything, it will become known about our statement in the Parliament. Thank you very much. Now we will have one more presentation of Deputy Minister Nemiria and Irina Herashchenko. After that, you will ask questions. Please, Irina. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, and I beg your pardon that I'm late. I had a meeting with a delegation, EU delegation in Ukraine. This discussion was about when the best time to ratify the agreement on association. I would like to tell you this, that this meeting is taking place after a very important professional discussion which was yesterday in the Committee on Euro Integration, where there were all views expressed, all opinions, and that follow the process of ratification. That honestly, I would like to tell you that one political force and its position was quite unexpected, and that belongs to majority which demanded from the parliament to urgently bring the agreement for ratification. From the government, by the way, they didn't send, they have not sent a document to the administration of the president, but maybe it's a campaign begins. We'll have early elections in Ukraine, and maybe it's a discussion among Democrats who is the most European, pro-European. It's important that it doesn't hinder our common business. Finally, today, Ukraine has an absolute consensus between branches of power as to necessity, irreversibility, and prospects, and that we must be on the road to Euro integration. And that work must be very active. The President of Ukraine put maximum efforts for the association agreement to be signed on the 27th of June. Because it's not a secret for anyone, not for Georgian colleagues and partners, and not for Moldovan partners and colleagues, that in EU also there are some countries that tried to give arguments that the signing should be later. The fact that this agreement is started to work for Ukraine, that's a unique chance, and it's not only a political but also a symbolic and economic event and an opportunity, because at present European market is open until November according to the agreements, and the agreement was just signed. But the market European is open for Ukrainian goods. And for European goods to Ukraine, they have to pay custom fees, and every month Ukraine gets 250 million hryvnia to our budget from that. What is happening now with the association agreement? Well, will it be ratified? And what's the position of the government? Maybe the president. There is no alternative to ratification of the agreement on association, and the president of Ukraine, because of importance of the ratification, not only for Ukraine but for every member of the EU. He calls personally and asks the European parliaments, who that Romania, Latvia, and he thinks there's.
Thank you, the Parliament, for ratifying the association agreement. By this support in Ukraine, that's way to Euro integration. The European Parliament in the same way ratified this agreement, so it's expected that the Ukrainian Parliament will do that not later than September 2014. The stance of the presidential administration that is shared by UDA party is this follows. It should be the right time for ratification. It's also important not just to ratify something without any reservations and conflicts, but we also have to adopt the national plan for implementation of this agreement, because at this point less than one half of our legislation is prepared for the European standards, and this legislation is not just about political issues but so important food safety, environmental and other standards. All the branches of power have to take the responsibility and realize that this work should be very careful and diligently done for implementation purposes. And a very important aspect, national program for implementation is developed by the government, but the legislature haven't seen it yet. It was given to our European partners, and formally we approached the government at the Committee of European Integration to receive this program for the MPs to see, to discuss and finalize if necessary, because diplomats have some words of caution to utter. This should not be a declaration. This should be doable also the deadlines for this kind of development and good progress. I didn't hear Oleg Rybachuk's statements, but I presume that he mentioned some coordinating body, some steering body as a real hub, as a real instrument, not just coordinating efforts and work of all the ministries and agencies in European integration, but also in a real fashion this should be done for implementation purposes. And here I'd like to support Mr. Rybachuk as first Vice Prime Minister responsible for European integration and all the colleagues who urge us to gain the impetus and develop a certain toolkit at the government. Our political force is of opinion that we should enlarge the Committee on European Integration to learn from experience of the Baltic states, Eastern European countries like Poland, when the decision was taken on associated membership integration to EU. The committees of Euro integration, the special status, and there we had, by all means, heads of all factions to develop some reconciled position for adoption of key laws having to do with approximation and transposition for the legislation. So, taking all the aforementioned into account, I would like to emphasize another thing. President of Ukraine is in favor of fast-track ratification of this agreement, but the time should be right for Ukraine. All the procedures and the regulations should be complied with. Without that, we adopted one international document, the Kharkiv Accords. The Russian journalists were first to see it, and then Ukrainian diplomats, and no deputies ever saw them. So the procedure is very important for adoption of such documents. In this case, we also have trailblazers like Moldova and Georgia. Our Moldovan and Georgian colleagues can see it clearly that our agreement is bigger, broader, deeper, and more comprehensive. And we have to comply with international legislation. And now we have the trilateral consultations of the EU, the Russian Federation, and Ukraine on the agreement. And there are certain concerns expressed by experts, mass media, and journalists whether the Russian pressure will be put on this process. It's impossible to change any letter, even after the initialing of it. Our colleague now, Minister of Foreign Affairs, that was to his credit. It's 8 kilos of paper. That's one copy. And there's no letter to be changed. All the consultations are about the European side and the Ukrainian side trying to comfort the Russian side as far as any damage of their interest is concerned. We do not need 115 economic and trade wars in addition to the unrest in the east of the country, because the mission of our diplomats, our government, our authorities is to protect the Ukrainian market, Ukrainian manufacturers, Ukrainian budget. Very complicated in this difficult situation. Our economy is mobilized for the war. Part of the economy is at the same time working for the Russian export. And that's what we are trying to take care of. In that situation, we do not need any speculations and any championship in Euro integration among our supporters. But we also have to support European laws, pro-European laws. We have to adjust, to implement, to enforce, and there should be a minister on European integration, vice prime minister on European integration to coordinate efforts of all the ministries and agencies on this very important issue. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much.
Таким образом, коллеги, вы могли увидеть, что
And you've seen, colleagues, that practically now we have 2 camps or two schools of thought on European integration. There are some convinced champions of fast-track ratification, regardless, and that was expressed by Mr. Nemira. And the second opinion, and that was voiced by Irina Gerashchenko, that it is necessary, in addition to ratification, also to take some institutional steps. From my own point of view, I would like to say that we should not confuse implementation for ratification. It's like apples and orange. The language cannot be changed, and we have to ratify the language. The only reservation can be that in the parliament we have now 300 voices, the votes. But Mr. Nemira tried to convince us otherwise. We can now put questions to all the speakers. Georgian ambassador, Ukrainian MPs, and Georgian MPs. Mr. Nemira is not available, but Oleg Rybachuk is still here.
Желающие есть задать вопрос?
Are there any people willing to put a question? Alexei Spinotseva. This is to Mr. Rybachuk. They say that it's a household opinion, like that this progress will first lead to economic losses. Can you somehow refute this or prove otherwise? Economy is a very broad notion, we should understand. We can say with full conviction that when Ukraine becomes part of the European market, when the standards operational, the reforms are done, that will be for the benefit of every Ukrainian. We should not discuss some general things. We just have to analyze the background of the countries that joined the EU 5-10 years, this kind of span, and you'll see that the results are spectacular. I remember my conversation with the Polish President Kwasniewski. He always said that Ukraine had big advantages versus Poland. As a startup, the structure of our economy, especially potential of our agricultural sector. I understand that for Europe, the issue of agriculture is quite sensitive, but we should understand, all of us, that if Ukraine conducts reforms and implements European standards for agricultural produce. Yesterday there was another regulation adopted on the quality of fodder, because that will allow for Ukrainian producers, Ukrainian farmers to have access to the European markets. But for us, it's very important that we understand, and it should be certified by the European quality and safety laboratories. That is not corrupt as some veterinary service or sanitary service. You understand that there are no such entities in the European Union. Instead, we have independent labs controlled by the EU and the EU alone. It's kind of a private business. If you have a lab certified and accredited, you use some funds to conduct control, but if you are caught in red-handed with fraud, you lose your business. So the reliability of such system and trust in such system is much higher. We survived Chernobyl accident. We have extremely dangerous environmental challenges. We need milk as milk, not as some Mendeleev matrix. And there should be requirements to collection of such milk, automatic milking, the quality of fodder, quality of feed, but in the Ukrainian meat, also in Ukrainian sausages, we need meat, not just 50% of unidentified additives and drinkable water, bottled water can be of different quality, and this includes quality of our drinkable water. Our agricultural sector is most dynamic. When yesterday we were discussing the committee, somebody mentioned that over this period of time, certain quarters like grape juices, Ukrainian wines, it was all exhausted within weeks, and we can't do it. And some SMEs in Ukraine are very keen on that, and they've done a lot to join such markets. So we'll have problems, difficulties in the defense sector, like engineering, specific industries. Ukraine cannot afford 8 shipbuilding facilities, and we should not maintain them artificially. We cannot have heavy industry a la Soviet Union, but we have to, of course, restructure and rearrange. We cannot have big towns designed for industry and hundreds of thousands, and that was all centralized for the Soviet Union. It was designed, but we cannot have any future for this ineffective model. The only effective model on that they offer its Eurasian. And they are telling us that we can buy that, nobody can buy it. It's not an incentive, if you ask me. I'm not simplifying the challenges. I understand that there's no other way to upgrade Ukraine. For our certificates, European quality, it will be sold everywhere. Anything can be sold if it's in compliance in India, in Asia, in Africa, because the world has to face deficit of foodstuffs. So the future belongs to those countries who are big producers. The EU can help us in one thing. They will provide for the opportunity to arrive at the standards that we cannot maintain on our own and introduce on our own.
This is the mentality not only of students last night before exam, but also in our businessmen. They don't do anything, they don't modernize until there is no other choice. I have a question to the ambassador. International Department of Hundreds of Maidan. As we know, Georgia ratified the association agreement. Ukraine probably will do that in the nearest future. Tell me, please, after Ukraine ratifies the agreement, what are the prospects in bilateral relations between Ukraine and Georgia being associated members in EU? How the association agreement of Georgia will influence on relations with former Soviet states? How it will influence on that? First of all, I think the ratification of the association agreement and our further road to full-fledged integration, and I hope Ukraine will do the same, because EU, that is a successful union of countries. Despite the crisis, they have problems, but this is quite a successful integrational union. And we want that, and Ukraine, Moldova, and us, we are members of the Council of Europe, and European countries are members of the Council of Europe. So our place is in that successful place where we have EU. That is positive for bilateral relations, and the For bilateral relations with other countries, we are not a member of CIS. We left it after Georgian war in 2008. But what does it give to us? For Georgia, I will speak about Georgia. What is important for us that this is 28 developed countries are in EU. For our products, we have only 4 million of residents, and we can cooperate with those 228 countries with 500 million people. So on different levels, our experts, European experts, we get the benefit from such membership. When we have FTA, we will get about $300 million every year. Export will grow by 12%, and after we put in force FTA, then we'll have 7.7 import from EU countries. These are numbers we have now. Also, it allows us to be competitive because those standards that they have in EU, that's very important for us to have such standards because our products, for example, in 2006, our products they prohibited our products in Russia, our wines, agricultural products, etc. We had to diversify our markets. It was very difficult because many of our companies worked for Russian market, but we passed over that, and that was very difficult, but we are done with that. And now our wines are exported in 40 countries, and then the diversification allowed us to improve the quality and competitiveness of our products. Now, when we join EU, and when we have FTA, if we are successful, if we integrate economically with them, we'll try to get a full membership. This is a great opportunity for us, and we'll have competitive products. Our standards will be improved. Our quality. My colleagues from the parliament told that there is a lot of work to do. That's all. Those are advantages. I was responsible for membership in WTO, and we were one of the first Soviet countries that joined WTO. After us, just Ukraine. It took Ukraine 9 or 10 years, and it took Russia for 12 years. We should not waste our time for that. To become a member of WTO, it's clear that you must do it quickly. You should join a civilized club that unites all the developed countries. That's why. The same with EU. We should not waste time. What do I mean? Now we must do a lot. It takes a lot of work. 24 hours, 7 days a week, we should work. We should become competitive. What is competitiveness? Competitive means that you are successful. When you're successful, you get a chance to be attractive for investments, for tourists. And you can be attractive to Moldova and Georgia. As you know, 20% of our territory is occupied. They annexed Crimea, Pridnestrovia. They have a problem with Transnistria in Moldova. When our attractiveness grows, and that's a very good advantage. People who live on occupied territories, you will hear those benefits. When Moldova that signed an agreement and they have no visa regime before signing even, because Moldovans were very active, and that made people who live in Transnistria interested. What that association agreement that includes occupied territories. Yeah, that includes occupied territories. That is attractive for the whole Georgia, even for occupied Ossetia and Abkhazia. We have bilateral relations, by the way, with EU countries. We don't have a problem with that trade. We are members of the WTO, and we have association agreement. We have a free trade area with GOM countries, with our former Soviet republics, and with many of them we have very good friendly economic and political relations. Thank you. Economic relations with the EU and with other countries, future members, and relations with military relations. How to stop France from selling Mistral to Russia? Those so we are watching on relations between France and Russia and Germany and Russia. How could we stop them from such attitude to us, of attitude of Germany and France? It's a difficult issue. You know, after war 2008 between Russia and Georgia, after that war and after, we have now an association agreement with EU, and we were able to solve the crisis. And at that time, Sarkozy was the president of France. Despite all of that, and Russia doesn't meet its commitments. That's why 20% of our territory are occupied, and they don't take out their troops, and they don't allow European observers to be there. We have monitors from Europe on our territory, on the territory of Georgia. They're still there. They was obliged to observe not occupied territories, but also occupied territories, like human rights of those people who live on occupied territories. But they ignore all of that. Russia ignores all of that. And France, for example, after our war in 2011, they signed an agreement on Mistral, and now with Russia. And of course, it's sad, but there are 28 countries. They are different. They have different interests. They are different business. More than a lot of the trade. They do a lot of trade with Russia, and the Russians took a lot of loans in European countries. So of course, it's a very serious challenge for them. We understand that, but that support that is they provide and they will provide to Ukraine. We didn't have that support in 2008. We were in a much more complicated situation. Yeah, we were not happy, or they were not happy. They promised to sign agreement, but slowly we still have that problem. It's important that they observe what is happening in Georgia, but we were not able to get what we wanted to get. But I hope that in your case, and it's visible, you get international support. It's not what we wanted, but I hope that this time you'll get the support you need, and that international solidarity will be on our side. It must be on the side of truth, and the truth is on our side. Thank you very much, the ambassador. We have a question to MPs from Georgia. You spoke about Guam. When our both countries signed the association agreement, is it possible to reanimate cooperation between Ukraine and Georgia in the framework of Guam countries? We told many times that integration of Georgia to EU structures and signing the association agreement with EU will not hinder our membership in other international forms for cooperation, including Guam, and that cannot hinder bilateral relations between Georgia and our partners and our neighbor countries. I want to say that the association agreement encourages the development of such relations like bilateral with other countries that are not members in EU. And we can cooperate with other international organizations like Guam. I don't see obstacles on this in this cooperation. I don't see any problem with this. We will develop cooperation with our partners in bilateral formats and also on the international level. As to those countries that want to develop differently, we will do maximum to develop bilateral relations with such countries. Also, very briefly, and my colleague and our ambassador informed you about that. There is no contradiction, there is no obstacle. Russia no, Russia is not clear. Position of Russia is not clear. On bilateral level, we don't have any obstacle for cooperation. We want to cooperate on different levels, on cultural, on economic, on political, on social, with Kazakhstan, with Russia. In our relations with Russia, we don't have a breakthrough, but we have some results. So we will not have a problem if we cooperate with EU and also if we cooperate with Russia and with other CIS countries.
There are no such signals from the European side anyway. So there's no contradiction, there's no competition. So on the Guam, I think we have to, by all means, increase this cooperation because we have a very good format of cooperation in Eastern Europe, and we already enjoy the advantages, and we have to employ all the opportunities, especially all those countries that are ratifying now, Moldova, Georgia and Ukraine. Have to try use the opportunities. If you have any specific questions, I don't know. We are prepared to answer your questions. At this stage, we are quite open, saying that we cannot see any predicaments and for continuation of our cooperation, maintenance of our cooperation with Armenia, Azerbaijan. Of course, these are specific factors. You know that so we have all those difficult things sometimes with Russia, especially after the Triple H war. We have the only format remaining. This is bilateral format, the Karating and the Geneva process that is to be continued. The economic relations. We cannot have any diplomatic relations unless they leave the territory, 20% of our territory occupied by the Russian troop. Speaking of other countries, we cannot see any impediments for development even of our cooperation and we see no threat in development of our relations with the EU. Thank you very much. Our time is almost done, but one last question. We, of course, will come back to this discussion again to the ambassador. My question. We heard about Angela Merkel from you, and I cannot refrain from a question. We all know that back in 2008 at Bucharest summit in Georgia was supposed to be presented with the action plan from NATO, and Angela Merkel was against it, and she prevented Georgia from doing that. And as a result of that, we had the Triple Eight War. And they got away with it in Russia. As a result, we have another aggression, annexation of the Crimea, an aggression in some territories of Ukraine. Now, Angela Merkel is a negotiator between Ukraine and Russia on the side of Mr. Putin, as we can see. Can you politically evaluate the situation or analyze this circumstance? I understand the hypocrisy expressed by Angela Merkel. Maybe Ukraine and Georgia should raise this issue in some international entities like UN. I understand the question. NATO is a matter of consensus. No single leader can influence the process. It's your opinion. They have 28 members of NATO, as you know, probably. And we failed there together with Ukraine. It was a big mistake then, a big mistake that had its terrible impact on Georgia and then Ukraine. It's an established fact. But Georgia, even despite this war, Russian-Georgian war, never abandoned its strategic pathway, full integration into European and Euro-Atlantic space. Ukraine suspended its active progress, and we have the result. They say NATO is bad, NATO is a threat, and the European Union is a good thing, but now NATO is bad, the EU is also bad. So Georgia was thinking along the right lines and never abandoned that. I appreciate that unwavering course, and it's very important for our country that the opposition and the ruling party were in full cooperation. We have no differences over the matter. And Georgia, in Wales in September, we will be having this very important summit. We're realists, but we hope that the progress of Georgia over this period will be somehow appreciated. What the form is going to be, I don't know. I'm not prepared to say, but the progress will be appreciated and somehow positively reinforced. Okay. We cannot hear this question without a mic. There's no input. this is about possible bilateral cooperation between the U.S. on the one hand and Moldova, Georgia, and Ukraine individually on the other hand. This is on table to the Congress. If they take this decision, Moldova, Georgia, and Ukraine, I think this will be one of the best ways to support us and appreciate our hard work despite occupied territories, provocations, and conflicts and war. We were progressing, we were advancing, and I would like to say it's very symbolic that we are in the Maidan in Ukraine hotel. A couple of months ago, we wouldn't be in position perhaps to do that. And a couple of months later, we are talking about ratification. This is unstoppable. Nobody can impede this, and we will become respected members of the EU and NATO, I'm sure. Thank you very much for your optimism. Thank you very much for your participation. Mr. Kwashandradze, Mr. Dudidze. Thank you very much.